Hello and welcome back, adventurers. This is Captain TTRPG, and today we're talking about Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Hello and welcome back, adventurers. Today we are going to rank the subclasses for the champion. There are 7 subclasses or causes to rank, but before we dive in, let's go ahead and talk about criteria. Here on screen, you can see the criteria I use, and I will be ranking, of course, from S to D, as I usually do. S is a subclass that is clearly mechanically stronger for combat than other subclasses, while not falling behind in other pillars of play that naturally fit the class. Basically, it's kind of like the default or the right way to play the class. Mostly we avoid this in Pathfinder, but it can come up. A is a subclass that will be strong in combat for any adventure. And not only is it strong on its own, but it tends to make the team stronger as well, generally speaking, or it's just exceptionally good outside of teamwork. Of course, being a cooperative game, cooperation does tend to raise it up in the ranking. It should really lean into the strengths of the class as well. B is a subclass that is mechanically strong on its own or does a good job of boosting the rest of the party, but usually not both. It may be especially strong in certain campaigns, but not so much in others. It might also land here just because it doesn't do a great job of leaning into what the class is best at, but is still solid on its own. C is a subclass that lands here because it's just not that strong in combat in almost any campaign. There might be just a very narrow space for it, or it's just not better than just a base class without a subclass at all. It might not take advantage of the specialty of the class itself in its subclass. And D, this is just something you might want to avoid. It might actually deter from the base class in some way, or it's baiting you into a playstyle that's just not going to be effective. And hopefully we won't see this pop up either. All right, with that, let's go ahead and dive into the champion here. Again, with the champion, we have 7 subclasses to rank. These are referred to as the causes. And those are Desecration, Grandeur, Iniquity, Justice, Liberation, Obedience, and Redemption. So what kind of benefits do the causes provide? Well, mostly, I don't say mostly to say the other things don't matter, but this is like the big one you get. At level 1, you get your champion's reaction. And this is the reaction you're going to base everything about your subclass around, generally speaking. At level 9, you get an upgrade to that called the Relentless Reaction Upgrade. At level 11, you get the Exalted Reaction Upgrade. Again, these are just passive upgrades to your reaction. Then there are feats that require certain causes as prerequisites at level 1, level 12, and level 16. And each cause does have either edicts or anathema or both, which may or may not come into play. Make sure you're talking to your GM, always, so you don't end up in trouble and not being able to use your abilities. That being said, let's go ahead and jump in alphabetical order as we do with Desecration. This is an unholy cause. Probably not a huge part of your choice making, but it does have an effect on the game potentially. The edicts here: you must subvert or corrupt everything in your path that is pure and holy. So doubt amongst those holding ideals of purity and holiness. So yeah, you are truly evil here. Your reaction is Selfish Shield. The trigger is that an enemy in your aura damages you. Keep in mind your aura is 15 feet. This is true for all of our causes at level 1. There is a way to extend it later, but keep that in mind. When the trigger happens, you gain resistance to the attack that triggered it equal to 2 plus half your level, and then you deal extra damage. This is 1 extra damage to that creature until the end of your next turn. That goes up to 2 at 9th level and 3 at 16th level. At level 9, the Relentless upgrade is if your Charisma modifier is +3 or greater, then instead of being 2 plus half your level resistance, it is your Charisma mod plus half your level in resistance. If you are Exalted, meaning you're level 11, then after using your reaction, enemies in the aura take a -1 status penalty to attack rolls until the start of the next turn, which is great. And that's just generally just a -1 status penalty to attack rolls. The feats available to Desecration: at level 1, we have Ongoing Selfishness. This is only for this one cause. After you use your reaction, you gain resistance to any more attacks from that same creature this turn equal to half your normal resistance. So it's not just to 1 strike anymore, it's for the entire current turn. At level 12, you can take Gruesome Strike. This is available to more than just Desecration. It'll pop up with a few. The prerequisite is it is available to Desecration, Iniquity, and Obedience. The requirement to use this is that your strikes are currently benefiting from extra damage due to your reaction. And with this one action strike, you double the bonus damage from your reaction, and if you hit, the creature has to succeed a Fortitude save against your class DC or become drained 1. After using this, the creature is immune for 24 hours. And finally, at level 16, you have Instrument of Slaughter available to yourself. The prereq is available to Desecration, Iniquity, and Obedience. Whenever you critically hit with a strike benefiting from your extra damage from your reaction, the creature also takes persistent bleed damage equal to 2 of your damage dice. This is the first of our selfish causes. This isn't about helping the party, it's about helping you survive and then, of course, destroy whatever attacked you, which are still both good things. The resistance here is not bad, but it's not amazing either. We will see that other reactions are going to have higher resistance numbers, though those are going to be about supporting allies, not yourself. What I do like is that this is likely to work. As long as you're up in the fray with enemies, it will trigger pretty much every round. It doesn't require an ally to be in your aura along with you, though the enemy does have to be there in your aura that is attacking you for this to work. The extra damage is obviously low, as low as it can get, but more damage is still good. It's still flat damage. When we look at the level 9 upgrade, I actually really don't like this. It can be a boost, potentially, and any added resistance is good, but it forces you to really go high on charisma path if you want to take this. And I don't know that I like that design philosophy for this specific cause, right? It wants you to be up there taking hits, but it's saying don't take con, take charisma to reduce damage slightly more. The added resist, I mean, you can get up to 3 more, right? Rather than 2+, you can get up to 5+ if your charisma is high enough, and that's nice, right? An extra 3 resist is solid, don't get me wrong. So it probably offsets losing the constitution, and it does let you play with charisma a little bit more. The Exalted boost, I just love. It's meant to help you when you're getting ganged up on, I suppose, but even against one target, it's still -1 to attacks against you, and that matters, right? You're reducing crits and hits. It's especially true if the creature that triggered the reaction goes for another strike and now has a -1 on top of map. The chance they're going to hit you with that one's going to be pretty low, and crit's almost going to be impossible. It also helps to make up for a flanking against you, right? So creatures are flanking you, you're at -2 basically AC, now you're only at -1, which is really nice. Ongoing Selfishness feels like a must-take with this build. Yes, the creature is likely only going to have, going to attack you once more on this turn, so basically it's an increase to your damage reduction value for that one strike with your action, but it's still a straight-up improvement to your reaction, but it does help you reduce that potential damage. When we get to level 12 and 16, I'll probably only deep dive on it here because it applies to 3 causes. Gruesome Strike is the level 12, and it's not great. Doubling the extra damage, especially on this cause, is pretty poor. You're going from at most 3 to at most 6, which isn't anything special for one strike around. It's not terrible, but it's not amazing. Causing drained 1 is great, but keep in mind that you not only need to successfully strike, but then a creature has to get a fort save and fail it against your class DC. An even level creature is probably looking at like a 65% chance to succeed, and then if you had maybe a 60% chance to hit in the first place, well, basically don't count on inflicting drain when you go to choose to take this strike on average. And unless you're going against a lower level creature, and then it's much more likely to happen. Don't get me wrong, it's a damage increase and it's absolutely worth taking, as you can place a normal strike with it, and it's just simply straight up better than a normal strike, but it's not game changing. My final issue, though, is that the creature is immune to the strike for 24 hours after one use. That is terrible if you don't take the creature down this turn. And finally, we have Instrument of Slaughter. This is only on a crit, but the added damage is pretty solid. It depends on your weapon, but assuming like a D8 or better, this is really a solid damage boost, right? That persistent bleed damage is really nice. You're likely going after your reaction target anyway, and this is just passive, and the only downside that it won't work on creatures that can't bleed. So there's going to be a lot of undead it doesn't work on, and a few other things, but it's probably not the end of the world. So that is a lot to say about just our first one. We do need to get the actual grade. Keep in mind, I really had to deep dive on a couple of things here. The selfishness is okay, but we really never hit S tier, and the somewhat weak resistance with not huge damage, but has some decent added means I think this lands at a low B for me. Honestly, I was close to a C on it, but hearing myself talk about it, I think enough pulls it up to a B, but it's certainly not my favorite, and it does hurt the selfish options here a little bit. The fact that, of course, Pathfinder is a team game, and this really isn't leaning into that side. Grandeur. We have Anathema here. You should not despoil yourself by associating with fiends or unholy forces. Your edicts. Provide a shining example for others. Enjoy and share the beauty around you. Keep yourself tidy and well-groomed. Your reaction is Flash of Grandeur. The trigger is an ally is damaged by an enemy, and both are in your aura. Then you give the attacked ally resistance to the damage equal to 2 plus your level. The attacker is then afflicted by Revealing Light, which is basically dazzled, plus some more visibility problems for them until the end of your next turn. A little more specifically, Revealing Light causes the target to become dazzled, and they become concealed if they were invisible, and they're no longer concealed if they had been concealed. So you're making them easier to find, and of course making it so they are dazzled, which is great. The Relentless upgrade at level 9 is the attacker takes persistent spirit damage equal to your charisma modifier, which can't end while it is affected by Revealing Light. And Exalted at level 11, all other enemies in your aura are affected by Revealing Light for 1 round. Then we have the feats. At level 1, we have Brilliant Flash. When you use your reaction, the target is also off guard for 1 round. At level 12, you get Blessed Counterstrike. This is available to Grandeur, Justice, Liberation, and Redemption. The requirement is an enemy triggered your reaction since last turn, so just some enemy had to. Then this must be used against the enemy targeted by your reaction. You increase your damage by 1 weapon die for this strike. If it hits, that creature has weakness equal to half your level to attacks from yourself and all allies until the start of your next turn. And level 16, Instrument of Zeal. The prereq is again either using Blessed Counterstrike, which is what we just talked about, or Retributive Strike, which is tied to Justice itself. We'll get there. It's available to Grandeur, Justice, Liberation, and Redemption. When you critically strike with Blessed Counterstrike or Retributive Strike, you deal 1 additional damage die, and the creature is slowed 1 on its next turn. Okay, so this is our first Holy Cause, and this one has a reaction that is very ally-focused. The resistance is stronger than we saw with Desecration, scaling much better. What really lands the reaction, though, is the effect on the attacker, right? Making it dazzled is a great way to increase survivability of your ally for following attacks. The removing of concealment or invisibility, probably less likely to matter, but the dazzled effect is just solid. The level 9 improvement, I like it. Simple. It's just a straight up damage boost. Attached, there's no saving throw, and great. This is just helping your ally, hurting the enemy. Cool. It's not unique. We'll see it pop up again, but that's okay. Again, it's not a lot of damage, but it just happens. So flat damage like that, great. The Exalted upgrade is great too, because it doesn't matter who the enemies are going after. They're all going to have a reduced chance to target allies of yours. It's not a huge change, but again, it is a change. And forcing them to make a roll to even target somebody, especially when you've got multiple enemies in there, yeah, that's going to have an effect. Then we have the feats. Adding off guard to the creature is obviously huge, especially if you have a rogue in the party, but just generally, everybody's going to be able to go after that creature, and again, teamwork. I love that you're just adding ways for allies to add damage and take a creature down that dared to strike an ally of yours. With level and with level 12 and 16 feats. These are going to be repeats, so I'll deep dive here the first time we talk about it. Blessed Strike, I like way more than Gruesome Strike. The added damage may not be much higher and could be lower, but I prefer the added die anyway. Like, I prefer just to have that in there. The real boost here is the weakness added to the creature. You're always best to focus down enemies as a team, and that's what this is all about. This says, hey, come after this target, we are going to destroy it. And there's no save, it just works, right? There's no fort save afterward. By the time you get access to the feat, you're talking about a weakness of 6, which is a lot if multiple people are going to strike this. Then we have the Instrument of Zeal, and I don't like this as much. First off, of course, it only applies to 1 strike for most causes that get it, and then Justice gets, 2 options for it, so it's slightly better for them. Then it's only on a crit, which of course is a little challenging. I don't mind the crit requirement with the fact that, it's level 16. I just wish it applied to more strikes, so you have more chances to crit, but it is just the 1 strike per round. That's probably okay. You might not be doing more than that anyway. And of course, that 1 strike has Flourish on it, so you're only going to use that once around as well. And of course, it has to be against the target of your reaction. Again, maybe not a huge deal, but keep in mind you're helping an ally. You might not be right up against that creature, so there's a little challenge with this. With a Selfish Cause, it makes sense that it would be against the creature that you use this on, because they're usually attacking you and fighting back and forth. So it's okay, but I do think the level 16 upgrade has a little more struggle to it, and it is still built on top of the level 12. All this to say, though, this is probably balanced out by the fact that I think this one's stronger. It's just less likely to happen. It's stronger than Instrument of Slaughter, that is. So I do think it's okay, and it's balanced well. And I still think the overall package here is much, much stronger. I think when you look at everything that this is doing, not only helping your allies, but putting save-free effects on enemies in your aura, especially as you raise your aura at higher levels, adding damage on top of creatures that are now negatively affected by status effects. Yeah, honestly, this one goes way up for me. This one hits way harder than I think any of the others here, and this gets a solid S from me. I honestly think this lives in that territory. That brings us to Iniquity. This is our second Unholy. The anathema is that you should never bind yourself with a law other than what your deity requires. And your edicts are to destroy that which offends you or stands in your way, take advantage of others, cheat, and steal. The reaction is Destructive Vengeance. The trigger is an enemy in your aura damages you. When you take damage from a creature in your aura, you can choose to take additional damage. This is what the reaction does. This is 1d6 additional damage to yourself, and you get to deal that same amount as spirit damage back to the attacker. The damage that you and the attacker take increases to 2d6 at 5th level, 3d6 at 9th, 4d6 at 12th, and 5d6 at 16th, finally with 6d6 at 19th level. Your attacks gain extra 2 damage, spirit damage, to that creature until the end of your next turn, and this increases up to 4 at 9th level and 6 at 15th level. The Relentless upgrade at level 9 is an enemy damaged by the initial reaction's damage also takes persistent spirit damage equal to your charisma modifier. Again, I said we'd hear about this a few times. At Exalted, level 11, each enemy in your champion's aura other than the triggering creature takes half the damage you deal to the triggering enemy. Right, so you take 7 damage and deal 7 back. All the other enemies in here take 3. The feats at level 1, you have Vicious Vengeance. You gain a circumstance bonus to the damage you deal with your reaction equal to the number of damage dice that you're dealing. So at level 1, this will be 1 extra damage. At level 5, this will be 2. However, this damage doesn't hurt you, it only hurts the enemy. So it's finally not equal. At level 12, we of course have Gruesome Strike. And at level 16, we have Instrument of Slaughter again. So we are here with our second Selfish Cause. Though it is selfish, you're also harming yourself, which doesn't make itself less in any way. It's just also painful. Anyway, this is the highest damage option we have, but it certainly comes at a cost. The reaction can pump out a lot of damage if you're willing to take the damage. The other causes are about reducing someone's damage, either yours or an ally's, but this isn't that. This is about, let's just heap the damage on and just keep pumping it out. The question is if the trade-off is good enough. For starters, this happens when you take damage from a creature in your aura, so not necessarily an attack, which is cool. If you built yourself to have high enough hit points, and you already have a lot from the class, but a significant con or really solid ancestry can help, especially at low levels where it's really dangerous, then you're probably okay to use it. This is certainly scary at level 1. It'll get way less scary the higher you go up in level, so just keep that in mind. So as you level up, this is going to feel like less of a punishment, even as you add on dice, right? Because your hit points go up at much higher rate than this damage goes up, significantly higher. So keep that in mind. Of course, enemy hit points are also going to go up. I don't like that it's selfish and that it involves self-harm all at the same time. So most of what the class does is about, aiding, reducing damage, redirecting enemies, and this is kind of the antithesis of all of that. Adding to the damage with persistent spirit damage is great as an upgrade, especially since the creature will take that at the end of this very turn, right? It's persistent damage, and they take it at the end of their turn. Then we have the Exalted upgrade, so I'm not sure necessarily how the two interact, but I failed to find an answer, so go with me here. Either the triggering creature is the only one that takes the persistent damage, or all enemies in the aura take it once you're Exalted. The reason I think that it might be the latter is because all enemies in the aura are taking half the initial damage, but it's still the initial damage. And the Relentless line says an enemy damaged by the initial reaction's damage takes the persistent damage, which they all did as far as I can tell. Now, if that is the case, then it's a very solid AoE, and the best AoE damage we're going to see from the champion class, as far as I can tell. It's still not huge damage, but it's very nice to get. But of course there's, no save, which makes it much stronger, which is why you can't have it be huge. So all that I do like. Adding to this, the level 1 feat is finally where we're getting a little more damage that thankfully isn't both sides, but it's just not that much damage. It's okay, and it scales up with you okay, but it's not crazy. And the level 12 and 16 feats, we've really already discussed those. One thing I will say about the level 12 Gruesome Strike is it is better here, right? Because it's based on the amount of extra damage you do with your hits. And where it was 1, 2, 3 with Desecration, it is 2, 4, 6 here. So you're actually getting a much higher return on that strike's investment in this case. But otherwise, we have the same issues we had before. At level 1, I really don't like this cause. It just feels like way too much of a gamble. After level 1, I think the gamble goes way down. I just don't know. I don't know if I like it better. I do think I like it better than Desecration. It's too selfish to get into an A. But I do think it's a decent B. That is, partially keeping in mind my assumption about the AoE damage causing persistent damage. We'll see what people's thoughts are on that one. Justice. Our anathema. You take advantage of another or cheat, so don't do those. Your edicts. You must follow the law, respect legitimate authorities or leadership. Your reaction is Retributive Strike. The trigger is an ally is damaged by an enemy and both are in your aura. You're going to give that ally resistance equal to 2 plus your level. We're going to see this a lot. But if you are in melee range of the attacker, you also get to strike. The Relentless upgrade is that the attacker takes persistent spirit damage equal to your charisma modifier when you hit with your reactive strike. The Exalted upgrade at level 11, each ally in the aura in melee range of the attacker can use their reaction to strike at it, but they have a -5 penalty to their attack roll. Your feats. At level 1, you have Nimble Reprisal. You can use a ranged weapon to make a ranged strike for your Retributive Strike instead of a melee strike. The enemy still has to be in your aura, though. Also, if you are using a melee weapon and the creature is beyond your reach, but moving 5 feet would put them in your reach, you can step to get within range and then strike. And then level 12, we have Blessed Counterstrike, and level 16, we have Instrument of Zeal. This is our first neutral option, not holy or unholy. This one has far more direct approach to dealing with the triggering enemy. Getting to strike as a reaction on top of something else is good. I mean, just getting to strike is good. We know that from reactive strike. So damage reduction, reactive strike together seems like an easy win, right? The problem is getting both of them to occur at the same time. For the base reaction to be useful, you have to be in melee along with an ally and hope the enemy approaches from the correct angle. Because if that doesn't happen, or if they move away, before striking your ally or something, you're not going to be able to strike back. So unless everything lines up, you're not getting the second half of reaction. You can certainly help the process by using a reach weapon, because nothing says the enemy has to be adjacent to you, just within reach of your strike. This all changes though if you take that level 1 feat, but we'll get there. The Relentless upgrade we've seen before. Great. It's more difficult to get here because unlike with Grandeur, where they're going to be hit by Revealing Light anyway and then just take the damage, now you have to strike them. So even if they are in range, if you miss the strike, they still don't get the damage. So this is a few steps down in my mind compared to Grandeur. The Exalted upgrade is also iffy in my mind. How many allies are you going to have within range of the creature you're using this on? In melee range, mind you. Probably just the ally being attacked, and you, obviously, if you were there. So if that's the case, and it's a martial ally, it may not want to waste its reaction on a -5 to hit version, especially if it's a martial who has reactive strike, who might have a chance of using that and not have a -5. So about that level 1 feat. This finally makes your chances of getting that strike off pretty reasonable, and you should absolutely grab it at level 1 if you're going to go with this. It can make for a really solid ranged build, actually, which is very cool. This is one of the best ranged attack options. Again, Grandeur is also perfect for ranged, but fine. It's challenging for ranged martials to get good at using their reactions, right? Generally speaking. For you, that's not a challenge at all. And you get to strike with it, which is great. This also helps with your melee damage and repositioning without triggering other creatures' reactions. Remember, it's a step you get to take. Stepping means creatures right next to you aren't going to be able to reactive strike you. So honestly, this 1 feat turns what was, in my opinion, a pretty bad reaction into a really solid reaction. Then we had the level 12 and 16 feats. The level 12 is solid, great, nothing changes here with it. But level 16 gets a boost. The fact that the level 16 can be used with both your reactive strike part of your reaction and the level 12 strike means you're the best at using the level 16 feat here. Even with some of this coming together pretty well, we have the level 1 feat required for this to even feel good. And even with that, I still don't think it feels as good as Grandeur at all. The Exalted upgrade, I think, is still really bad. So this is one that I still think is better than Desecration, but it lands in B. I think it's solid. You're helping your allies. It's just, there's so much of it that's likely to not work out that I don't think it's solid enough to be an A. That's its problem. It's good at helping allies, but not so good at helping you, in my opinion. Then we have Liberation. Your anathema, you should not force or threaten someone to act in a certain way, engage in slavery or tyranny. And your edicts, you must oppose slavery and tyranny, fight for others' freedom to make their own decisions, respect choices others make for their own lives. Your reaction is Liberating Step. The trigger is an enemy damages, grabs, or restrains an ally, and both are in your aura, meaning the person restraining, the creature restraining, and your ally. If your ally was damaged, it gets resistance to the damage equal to 2 plus your level, standard stuff. If restrained, or immobilized, or grabbed, or paralyzed, your ally gets another save against one effect causing that, or gets to try to escape, as usual using athletics or acrobatics. Regardless, if your ally is free, meaning not restrained, immobilized, grabbed, or paralyzed, by the time that this reaction ends, that ally can step as a free action. The Relentless upgrade at level 9. If the enemy was causing your ally to be grabbed, restrained, immobilized, or paralyzed, that creature then takes persistent spear damage equal to your charisma modifier. The Exalted, you and all allies capable of moving in the aura can step as a free action, even if the ally that you targeted to help can't move at the end of their, or at the end of your reaction. And the feats. Level 1, we have Unimpeded Step. The ally affected by your reaction is unaffected by difficult terrain, greater difficult terrain, narrow surfaces, and uneven ground for the granted step. Normally, those things would stop you from being able to take a step. Basically, you're saying all those things that stop you from being able to take a step, no, don't worry about those. You can ignore them. And this is true for you and all allies once you get to Exalted, that level 11 upgrade. And then at level 12, we have Blessed Counterstrike. And this is unique, but at level 12, we also have Liberating Stride, which is a feat available just here for Liberation. Instead of stepping, the triggering ally can stride half its speed at the end of your reaction. Even if Exalted, only the triggering creature gets that benefit. So if that's better for them than stepping, they can get further distance. And at level 16, we have Instrument of Zeal. So here we have another reaction focused on allies, which I consider, of course, good to start with. But much like with Justice, there are conditions to meet and to get the most from it. The base resistance is good. So if that's what you get, you're not going to feel bad about it, at least not yet. Plus, if the ally wasn't affected by any of the conditions, it can still step, which is cool. It gets hit, it steps, and now very possibly that enemy won't be able to make another strike, which is good. Keep in mind that the steps occurs when you make the reaction. So again, Big Brute rushes up, makes the first strike, ally steps away, Brute's out of range, can't do follow-up strike. That's strong. This also means creatures that run up, strike, and have grab as part of their strike, just grab, because normally the way grab works, the creature has to strike, and then they use their next action, and they can grab you. However, that's another action. Well, you've moved away. They can't grab you anymore. So that can be really strong. Every now and then, you might trigger this from the other conditions other than just taking damage, and it'll feel really good when that happens. But I'd say it's not going to be that often, right? You're taking damage way more often than you're getting restrained or paralyzed or grabbed. So it might happen in that way, but I wouldn't count on it. Which means when we get to the Relentless upgrade at level 9, it's not going to trigger very often, because it only triggers when they're being affected by one of those conditions, not when they take damage and use your reaction. It's really disappointing because it's the combination of all of the elements that makes Grandeur strong. The Exalted here is better, letting all your allies step for free, which is just good. It's always good, right? Allies being able to move for free is always good. So this could save critical actions for a player on their next turn. Means if they have to run away, now they're usually out of melee range, so they're not going to trigger reactive strikes. That's a very good thing. So, I don't want to ignore that. That is strong. Just the level 9 upgrade, I don't think is. The level 1 feat is just here to guarantee that the step won't be impeded, and that's great, but it isn't like the most necessary level 1 take in my mind. Yes, difficult terrain, greater difficult terrain, these other things, they come up, but not often enough that it's, it might be like every third session you have one combat where one time you use this reaction and they can't step because of it. Is that worth a feat? As for the level 12 and 16 feats, I feel for the shared ones at least, the same way I did about Grandeur. So it's okay. They're good. I like them. They're not any better or worse here necessarily. As for the prereq feat at level 12, assuming you can take it, it's certainly nice. Any extra movement is a win, especially if the ally is like Monk or something, because it's half of their movement speed, and that's really far for certain classes. I don't think it's amazing. I don't think it's a must take, because the step is doing most of the work already. So, and step is just better to use, even when you have the option to strike, if it's going to trigger reactive strike from the enemy. So there's a lot to like here. Then there's some stuff I don't like, as well as I like it in Grandeur. This lacks a critical piece Grandeur had, and that is debuffing the enemies. This is just helping allies. There's no debuff or effect on enemies at all, especially if they don't grab or cause one of those conditions. They aren't even taking damage. So, yes, I love that it's helping allies, but it's not doing both sides that I think it could do. It's not helping your team succeed in some way, some great way. but it is really helping that ally more than anything else I think is helping the ally. So once again, that keeps it at a B. This is probably sounding really boring, but I honestly think they all still live in this category. Next up, we have Obedience. The anathema is letting one who is lesser than you wield power over you or lead you. Your edicts, you must enforce proper hierarchies, topple illegitimate hierarchies, and lead when you're the most suited to the task. Your reaction is Iron Command. The trigger is an enemy in your aura damages you. Then you force it to make a choice between taking 1d6 mental damage or falling prone as a free action. You also deal an extra 1 spirit damage, 2 at 9th, 3 at 16th, until the end of your turn, your next turn, against that creature. The initial damage you deal, I mentioned that 1d6 if they choose to go the damage right. If they choose to go the damage route, is 2d6 at 5th, 3d6 at 9th, 46 at 12th, 5d6 at 16th, and 66 at 19th, just like we saw with Iniquity. The Relentless upgrade, if the enemy refuses and chooses to take the damage so they don't kneel, they also take persistent spirit damage equal to your charisma modifier. The Exalted is all other enemies in the aura either drop prone or take the minimum possible damage from your reaction. The feats, at level 1, you have Iron Repercussions. When the triggering enemy refuses to kneel, meaning it takes the damage, you can choose to change the mental damage to persistent mental damage instead. You make the choice before the creature chooses to kneel or not, and the amount of damage doesn't change. So 2d6, 3d6, 46, up to 66 could be persistent instead of just base damage. Then at level 12, you get Gruesome Strike, and at level 16, you get Instrument of Slaughter. This is our final Selfish Cause, and it's okay. I like the idea that a creature either kneels before you when called out, or takes mental damage. I actually did a Darth Vader build, if you want to look back, way long ago, that actually used this because it just felt right, and I still hold to it. I think that's a fun build if you want to check out that video. But let's really examine the reaction here. You are tanking damage and not reducing it in any way, which is worse than Desecration at a default, but better than hurting yourself. The options make this interesting, though. If the creature takes the prone approach and the damage, doesn't come from its final action, then it probably will just use that final action to stand back up again. That's not a bad thing, right? This basically means it was slowed 1, triggering this round. It lost an action. If it was the last action in the round, well, fantastic. The creature is now slowed 1 essentially for the next round, but even better than that, it's prone, meaning it's off guard, and that's a huge win for all of your attacking allies. So as a player, I would hope the GM would choose the kneel option, but I'm not going to assume that's true. So how about the damage? Well, it's the same damage that we saw with Iniquity, only it doesn't require self-harm to cause, with one massive difference. It's mental and not spirit damage. Spirit damage is fantastic, as it's almost never resisted. Mental damage can't hurt mindless creatures, so be careful on your campaign when choosing this. The scaling of the damage is still really solid, and adding extra damage probably every turn, unless creatures really want to bow down to you, feels good. The extra damage you deal to the creature next turn is not great, right? 1, 2, 3, but it's still adding flat damage onto the damage you already dealt with your reaction, most likely. The upgrade at Relentless, you might think I'd be against, since it can be avoided, but given the outcomes are either you take even more damage, or you lose that action and become off guard, yeah, either way I'm happy, honestly. And basically, the losing the action, possibly ending up off guard, is stronger than the damage easily. This is up raising them closer, right? You're raising the floor rather than raising the ceiling. I'm okay with that. Come in the middle. Then we have the Exalted upgrade, and I hate it. Yes, this is AoE damage, which is not something that this class is very good at. In fact, they're terrible at it. But this is really bad AoE damage compared to Iniquity. Yeah, all of them could decide to drop prone, but from a meta perspective, would you ever do that as a GM? I mean, maybe if they're all like 3 levels lower and prone to being afraid of you, guess. But, I mean, they're just avoiding probably, you know, a few damage. I mean, even at 19th level, this would just be avoiding 6 damage. They're not going to kneel for that. So if you have a GM, you know, like me, that might consider, if the enemy, because of who the player is, might consider falling prone, this is probably stronger, but you're likely just expecting to do a very small amount of AoE damage. So the power here really relies on GM, and I don't like to assume that the GM is going to take that route. They're going to take the less painful route. The level 1 feat, again, is about making it harder to refuse. 3d6 plus 4 persistent mental damage at level 9 is no joke, and might be more than the GM is actually willing to take, right? Because that's a lot of persistent mental damage. They might actually go the prone route because it might be better than taking what is on average a pretty solid amount of persistent damage. I still prefer some of the other level 1 feats to this one, but I do like what it's doing. The level 12 feat I still don't like, you know, as it's once per creature per day, and there's the fortitude save built in, but fine. No special interaction here. As for level 16, I do like the idea of a creature taking massive amounts of persistent mental damage and bleed damage at the same time, but it's not likely to happen. Unfortunately, many of the creatures who are immune to mental damage are going to be immune to persistent bleed damage, constructs, undead, stuff like that. So be careful. All in all, I think this lands right in the middle of the other two selfish causes, making it another B. I promise they're not all going to be Bs and one S. I promise. Which probably gives away the game here a bit, but we have Redemption. Your Anathema. Make sure you don't kill a sapient enemy without first offering a chance of redemption. And your edicts are try to redeem those who commit wicked deeds, show compassion to others, regardless of their authority or station. Your reaction, Glimpse of Redemption. The trigger, an enemy damages your ally and both are in your aura. Then the enemy chooses to repent or refuses, but mindless auto refuse. So if you're doing this to a mindless creature, it just always refuses, never repents. To repent means that the ally takes none of the triggering damage at all. If the creature refuses to repent, that means that the ally gains resistance equal to 2 plus your level to the damage, and afterward the triggering enemy becomes enfeebled 2 until the end of its next turn. On the Relentless upgrade at level 9, if the enemy refuses and becomes enfeebled, then it's going to take persistent spirit damage equal to your charisma modifier. The Exalted is if it refuses, then you can grant the resistance to yourself and all other allies in the aura, but the resistance is reduced by 2. So rather than 2 plus your level, it's just your level, but it's to you and all allies. The level 1 feat here is Weight of Guilt. When an enemy chooses to refuse and becomes enfeebled, you can make it stupefied 2 instead of enfeebled 2, but it's for the same duration. Level 12, you got Blessed Counterstrike, but you also have Lasting Doubt. When a creature refuses and becomes enfeebled 2 or stupefied 2, it then becomes enfeebled 1 or stupefied 1 for 1 minute after the end of its next turn. In the case of stupefied, the stupefied 1 ends if the flat check causes the creature to lose a spell, right? Because when you're stupefied, you have to make a flat check when casting a spell. So if they do that and they lose a spell, it ends the stupefied, which is not a bad thing. They lost a spell. And of course, at level 16, Instrument of Zeal. Okay, so this is our final cause, and it's both holy and ally focused. The reaction here is very good. So either way is a huge win. Nullifying damage completely is like you took the action away, and if it was a strike, you gave them map and you took an action away, which is awesome. Or at least reducing the effectiveness, you know, of a spell as well too, because it has to be damage, but it doesn't have to be a strike. If the creature refuses, again, know your GM, then the creature is still pretty negatively affected. So casters aren't hurt with the base version of this, right? Ranged combatants really aren't either, as strength doesn't really add anything, right? Enfeebled to a ranged creature that like does bow attacks, this means very little to them, but that's probably not the majority of what you're fighting. Finesse melee fighters still have their damage reduced, mind you, so even though it won't affect their chance to hit, their damage will still be reduced. In any case, this is one of, if not the strongest reaction, depending on your GM. Then we get to the Relentless boost, which, like Obedience, tries to push the GM toward what you more likely want, which is to just remove the damage altogether by raising the floor rather than the ceiling. Taking persistent spirit damage on refusal means you're likely going to add reliable damage because it is spirit damage, much better than Liberator could, honestly, because this is going to trigger far more often. Then we have the Exalted, which is all about reducing AoE spell damage. I mean, that's really what we're talking about here. I like that this is the level 11 boost because it's at higher levels, you're more likely to be bombed by AoE damage. But the problem is you have to be, close to the creature causing the damage. So if it's somebody throwing a fireball from 60 feet away, you're not going to be able to do anything about it because they're not within your aura. At level 11, the loss of 2 resistance means pretty much nothing if you're catching a couple of allies in this, right? So if there was AoE damage, you'd much rather give 11 resistance to everybody than 13 resistance to one person. That's not even a question. And it doesn't just have to be things like spells. Yes, AoE spell damage is a great example, but you've also got things like Dragon Breath attacks, right? That are going to be more common at higher levels. Even melee creatures can sometimes do AoE attacks, 3-action things that hit everybody around them. This is going to count for all of that. The level 1 feat I consider basically necessary. There may be a campaign where you'll just won't find casters at all, but I would take it just in case, especially with the upgrades later on. It's really nice if you can catch casters with this. The level 12 strike is good as always, and there's a second level 12 feat here. This is nasty, especially to casters. Putting Stupefied on a caster for a combat would be a huge win for the party, even if no spell is lost. But if they do lose the spell, just phenomenal. Keep in mind, most effects that cause Stupefied are things that have a will save. Not everything, but the majority of Stupefied effects come from will saves. Will saves are something that creatures that have spells are really good at. Just giving them Stupefied because they were too close to you when they did damage is probably the most reliable way to put Stupefied on a caster. The level 16 feat I still don't love, and we don't have multiple ways to use it, so take it or leave it. Either way, for me, this is an easy A. It's not at the level of Grandeur. I still think Grandeur and all the debuffing it does and all that, I think is still stronger overall to help your party out, but this is really, really good. It's just not quite as good. So, strong take, love the helping allies. You're hurting enemies and helping allies. I love the combo of that, really leaning into what this class is all about. So, somehow I forgot to talk about one of the critical feats that affects every single one of our subclasses, but in a different way, and that is the level 14 feat Exalted Greatness. So I'm adding it here at the end, and we'll see if it moves anybody into a different category. The way this works is, by this point, you've already got the Exalted benefit for your reaction, so we're talking about these altering your Exalted benefit in some way, or just another add-on for when you use your reaction. As I go through them, I'll talk about what they do in my mind to the outcome that the subclass currently has, if any. And let's go ahead and kick it off with Desecration. So with Desecration, while you have the benefit, meaning you've got the plus to attack bonus because you used your reaction, or plus to damage bonus, sorry, because you used your reaction, you also gain a +2 status bonus to saving throws against effects created by enemies in your champion's aura. So a +2 status bonus to saving throws, just flat out, is nuts. This would be crazy strong, and I would consider it probably moving Desecration to an A, except for that it's only against effects created by enemies within your champion's aura. Now, if you took the aura expansion of a 30-foot aura, that might be just about everything, but it might not be. This is really, really strong. This kind of bonus is huge. Now, granted, it's just for you. I do want to keep that in mind. And Desecration was, kind of at the bottom. It was considered almost a C. This does not move it to an A, but this moves it to a much, much stronger B. And if it gave any bonus at all to your allies, like a +1 to your allies, which of course wouldn't be thematic, but if it did, this would boost it to an A. Then we have Grandeur. Any revealing light created by your flash of grandeur lasts for 1 minute. Think about that. This is any revealing light, which means also the ones that affect other enemies within your aura when you use your reaction. This is, I can go ahead and revealing light all enemies for the entire combat with one reaction. That is truly nuts. Now, this was already an S tier. If it wasn't, this would make it S tier, and this makes it S tier S. Like, this is so incredibly powerful. This is ridiculous that you get to have an effect put on all enemies in your aura for the entire combat as soon as one of them attacks an ally of yours. Yeah, that's really, really good. With Iniquity, the damage dealt to enemies other than the triggering creature increases by amount equal to the damage dice of Destructive Vengeance. And you apply this after you have the damage. So normally what happens, right? You make your reaction because you took damage. Then you get to do this massive AoE where, so you took damage, you added, say at this point, what, 46? We have 46 now? 46 damage to yourself. You dealt it back to that enemy plus a little bonus. Take half of that damage and you deal it to all other enemies in the area. So you dealt whatever it is, 16 back to your enemy. That deals 8 in the AoE. Well, now that 8 damage AoE becomes, because there were 4 dice, a 12 damage AoE. So this is adding flat damage on top of your AoE damage that was already pretty solid AoE damage for a martial class that doesn't do a lot of AoE. It's not crazy numbers, but it's still decent. So this is just adding to something you're already doing that others struggle with, right? Other champions really don't do AoE damage well. This is pretty solid. Now, it is just a small amount of added AoE damage, and at this level, another 4 damage isn't crazy, right? Because you've got spellcasting allies who are dropping AoE bombs for like 60 damage, and you're adding another 4. So it's not crazy here, but it is still nice. Leaves them at a B. It's not the boost that I think Desecration got, so it's not that strong to move them up to an AI there. It's a little boost, but it's still good. Next up, we have Justice. The penalty is -2 instead of -5. What penalty again? This is the penalty that allies take when they're trying to use their reaction to attack the creature that you helped your ally with the damage against, right? So enemy in your aura hits ally in your aura, you cut their damage partially down, and then you can use reactive strike against them. Retributive strike, I should be. You use retributive strike against them, then any allies in melee range can use their reaction to attack, but with a -5 penalty. Now it's just a -2 penalty. This didn't help at all. I'm not gonna lie. If it's a martial, they might have a better way to trigger their reaction that doesn't have a penalty at all. And if they're a caster, why would they want to use the reaction to try to strike with their weapon? This is basically not an upgrade in my mind. I'm sure people will disagree with me, and that's fine, but this is so wasted. It's just awful. Liberation. You and all affected allies can attempt to break free, not just the triggering ally. So it used to be that, hey, triggering ally gets to try to escape or make another save to break free, and then you, that ally, all other allies can step. But of course you couldn't if you were being restrained or anything like that. Well, now you all get to try to break free. This is crazy. Like, this is really strong, especially against AoE effects trying to immobilize you, restrain you in some way. This moves Liberation to A tier. Without a question in my mind, this moves Liberation to A tier. A mass attempt to escape from something truly punishing is so powerful, especially when it's round after round. Yeah, this moves up to an A. Obedience. The damage dealt to creatures other than the triggering creature who refuse to drop prone increases to half the damage the triggering creature would have taken, not just minimum. So the way this worked, obedience, they refuse to kneel, and that creature then takes, at this point, 4d6, whatever that ends up being. Let's go ahead and say 15 damage. However, everybody else in the aura that's an enemy would have taken minimum, which would be 4 damage. Now, instead of 4 damage, they're going to take maybe around twice that on average. This isn't crazy. This is basically the same upgrade that Iniquity got. It evens out to very close to that. So I don't think it's crazy. It's not bad. It's a little bit higher than the Iniquity one. Got a little bit higher boost, right? Because on a d6, the average is 3.5. Iniquity just got 1 more per, because you were at 1 per d6. Now you're at 3.5, cut in half. Anyway, it's very, very nearly the exact same thing. It's about 1 also. So Again, this doesn't move obedience anywhere. It's fine. It's a fine upgrade. You're not upset because you do more than just 1 per dice damage. Now you're doing, you know, slightly more than that. It's just not amazing. It's okay. Oh, once again, we see that our, well, for the most part, our selfish get worse upgrades than our team-based reactions, except for justice. And that's unfortunate, but it's fair enough. Again, desecration was strong. And then redemption. The resistance isn't reduced. So all this does is normally you do AoE resistance if it's an AoE effect, so that everybody gets resistance, which is strong. Only it used to be 2 plus your level for the ally, or just your level if it's everybody. Now it's 2 plus your level for everybody. Another 2 resistance for everybody does not bump this any higher. It doesn't go up to S because of that. It's a slight increase, but it's not blowing my mind. So the only one that moved for me is Liberation, went from B to A. So we have 1 S, 2 A's, and the rest are B's, and I feel pretty good about that. And that's it. 7 causes down. There are no class archetypes, which honestly is surprising to me. So no follow-up ranking video. What do you think? Am I way off about like Desecration being nearly C? Do you hate Redemption? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, adventure on.